Hi, y'all. Okay, my apologies for just going live at 9:08. Good morning, good afternoon, my ADOS and my ADOS allies. Thank you so much for spending your time with me this morning and this afternoon. I'm so thankful to have you in the house. Please feel free to chat. I'm going to get to your questions a little later on this live. Today, I want to talk about the legacy of Elijah Cummings. Yes, I had initially planned to have Charles Elware on as my guest, but he's been doing so much to serve us in this country that he wasn't able to do a little bit of the homework that I provided him with. So I'm going to reschedule him at a later time. And we were having quite a bit of a lovely exchange on my Angela Nirvana page when I posted something from one of our co-founders, Yvette Carnell, sharing her sentiment about Elijah Cummings. I felt it was very respectful. And then there was a very spirited exchange with data flying back and forth. And this video, or this live rather, is not about disparaging Elijah Cummings. I'm very, very grateful to him for his leadership and what he had to grow through 23 years in office. But I want to just ask you, as ADOS and allies, when do we get to hold our representatives accountable? When is that okay to do? We can't seem to voice our disdain for their lack of leadership in the ADOS communities when they're alive. We can't seem to voice our disdain in their passing. There is this real respectability politics that I believe has numbed us to the realities on the ground. And I believe that in burying our heads in the sand and not asking the tough questions has gotten us in this fight for our lives to prevent from becoming the permanent underclass in the country our ancestors built with their lives. So as the data was flying back and forth, there was a lot of ADOS who was up in arms over the data, and yet they couldn't present any data to support their arguments of Elijah Cummings being a great leader for the ADOS community. And so today I want to talk about that. And I just want you guys to share with me because, I'm fairly new in politics. Although I have opinions about what's going on, I've been impacted by what's going on. I'll just be honest. Perhaps I'm expecting too much of the people we put into office. And if that's true, please comment in the chat to counter my arguments about why I believe that too many people that represent us or look like us are not really doing the best service by us. If that were the case, why are we here in 2019? I believe you shall know our leaders by their fruit. And I'm not holding Elijah Cummings solely responsible for how we got here. But I am dealing with Baltimore, whom he's represented. during his time in office. So, with that said, uh-oh, my apologies, still growing, family, bear with me. I'm going to master this. I'm going to master this because we need more voices to speak up for ADOS. And God has chosen me, so I'm going to use my voice. So I appreciate your patience and I appreciate you being here. I want to talk, first of all, about Elijah Cummings. This is just going to be a brief bio of his. It's going to require a little bit of reading, family. I don't have all this data memorized. Elijah Cummings, a titan in Baltimore's political scene and a strong Democrat against President Trump, passed away on October 17, 2019, at the age of 68. Cummings served in the U.S. House of Representatives for Maryland's 7th Congressional District from 1996 until his death. He was born on January 18, Okay, and we're back. Thank you for your patience. Woo! Oh, the growing pains, family, the growing pains. So let me go back. He held the public office for 23 years and previously served 14 years in the Maryland House of Delegates. On the national level, Cummings had been a Democratic presence in House committees. He spent office as chairman of the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform and engaging in a war of words with Donald Trump, who was the subject of the committee's investigations. At the time of his death, Cummings was leading the impeachment inquiry against the POTUS. Representative Carolyn Maloney will now serve as interim chairman. Cummings and his wife, Maya Rockeymoore, formed a political power couple in Baltimore. Rockeymoore herself is a force in the Democratic Party. Okay, so that's a little bit about his background. Now, what I want to do here is talk about what are the roles and the responsibilities of the House of Representatives. We're back again. Don't know why I keep getting kicked off, but I'm determined and committed to finishing. So, I just got finished sharing that we can expect from our House of Representatives to introduce bills and resolutions, offer amendments, and serve on committees. That's what we can expect. So, with that said, let me share with you about the current economic climate per JP Morgan Chase for ADOS in Baltimore. According to responses given by Black residents in Chicago and Baltimore, a staggering 1 out of every 3 citizens has no liquid assets. No liquid assets on hand in the event of a job loss or medical emergency. These residents are defined as having zero net worth because they're unable to sustain themselves for 3 months or more if an unexpected life event occurs. When the financial resources of white residents in these 2 cities were analyzed, only 15% of them would fall into the zero net worth category. What's even more daunting is that Black residents are 3 times as likely to be unemployed or living in poverty. So let me stop right there. 33% of Baltimore residents, where Elijah Cummings was their congressman for 23 years, is at zero net worth. Moving on. These sobering stats on the racial wealth gap that exists in 2 major American cities come from the Corporate for Enterprise Development, CFED. The studies were titled The Racial Wealth Divide in Chicago and the Racial Wealth Divide in Baltimore, which is where this next bit of information I'm going to share with you comes from. Baltimore and the rest of the nation, racial economic inequality in Baltimore is very similar to the nation. In Baltimore, Blacks have a median household income that is 54% of that of whites, while nationally, Blacks have 60% of white income. The small Latino community in Baltimore has 70% of the income of whites, compared to Latinas having 72% of white income nationally. The very small Asian community in Baltimore sees the biggest difference in national racial inequality. In Baltimore, Asians have 84% the income of whites, whereas nationwide, Asian Americans have a much higher income, making 124% of what whites on the average make. Latinas are doing close to 25% better than American descendants of slaves in Baltimore. And Asians are doing 30% better than American descendants of slaves in Baltimore. And whites, though no longer officially legislated, Blacks remain isolated more than 100 years later. Elijah Cummings was Baltimore's representative for 23 years. Black residents make up 63% of Baltimore's population and do worse than the African American national average on nearly every outcome measure. Whites, on the other hand, constitute 28% of the population and fare better than national averages on most outcomes. Baltimore's, wow. Just share with me in the chat. Who am I to expect to legislate on ADOS behalf if not the House of Representatives, if not Elijah Cummings? I'm open. I'm open and available for you to counter this data. Reading on. Baltimore's racial inequality among African Americans and whites mirrors the inequality we find nationally, except in terms of employment and education. In Baltimore, more than twice as many Black families as whites live in liquid asset poverty, meaning they do not have sufficient savings to subsist at the poverty level for 3 months in the absence of income. The home ownership gap, central to the origin and current pervasiveness of the city's racial inequality, remains substantial, with 42% of Blacks owning their home compared with 60% for whites, and with a difference of $80,000 in value. Median home prices also reflect the long-term effects of Baltimore's redlining efforts. Meanwhile, Latinas and Asians are underrepresented compared with national demographics, 4.5% and 2.5% of Baltimore's population, respectively. Latinos' outcomes trend similar to those of Black residents. Asians tend to fare worse than whites, but better than Blacks and Latinas. The economic disenfranchisement of Baltimore's Black residents has extended to other life outcomes as well. The percentage of people with a bachelor's degree is 3.2 times higher for whites than for Blacks, in a time when a college degree is often a minimum requirement to secure a job. It is unsurprising then that the unemployment rate is 3 times higher for Black residents. And among business owners, white firms are valued nearly 20 times higher than those owned by Blacks. Baltimore's police commissioner recently told the White House that he was dealing with 1950s level Black and white racism. Though the city has long since abolished its Committee on Segregation, it has considerable work to do to reverse the effects of racist policies. The Racial Wealth Divide Initiative at CFED understands that redressing the disparity in economic outcomes requires an inclusive approach that addresses not only the disparities themselves, but also their root causes. Let's talk about those root causes, family. Let's talk about these root causes. Like I said, if you have anything to add, put it in the chat. I will read it once I'm done with my portion of the show. Let's talk about the root cause being slavery. The root cause being slavery. Remember, this is ADOS Hot Topics and making the case for reparations some more. While Maryland developed similarly to neighboring Virginia, slavery declined here as an institution earlier and it had the largest free Black population by 1860 of any state. The early settlements and population centers of the province tended to cluster around the rivers and other waterways that empty into the Chesapeake Bay. Maryland planters cultivated tobacco as the chief commodity crop, as the market was strong in Europe. Tobacco was labor-intensive in both cultivation and processing, and planters struggled to manage workers as tobacco prices declined in the late 17th century, even as farms became larger and more efficient. At first, indentured servants from England supplied much of the necessary labor, but as their economy improved at home, fewer made passages to the colonies. Maryland colonists turned to importing indentured and enslaved Africans to satisfy the labor demand. So, this is the reason why Baltimore and the rest of ADOS throughout the country are now the legs of the table that everyone else eats from. It all stems from slavery. All of it. And when we elect people that come from this experience, it's not enough to just sign on to study reparations, although Elijah Cummings did that. But as a son of sharecroppers raised in Baltimore, who's responsible for creating bills, I would have expected more of Elijah Cummings wherein ADOS is concerned. And had we gotten more from him, had we gotten more from the CBC, who is supposed to be there to represent us, perhaps we would not be on the bottom in the fight of our lives to prevent from becoming the permanent underclass in the country our ancestors built with their lives. Now, I don't disparage anyone, the money they earn for doing what they do. I don't disparage that. But let's talk about incomes for those of us who kept electing Elijah Cummings and representatives like Elijah Cummings to represent us. Let's talk about what those incomes are like. From the same racial wealth gap study, liquid asset poverty amongst Blacks is 67%, amongst Latina, 65%, amongst Asian, 43%, amongst whites, 32%. The median household income, same study, $33,801 for Blacks, $44,116 for Latinas, $50,531 for Asians, and $62,751 for whites. The racial wealth gap in Baltimore. Let's talk about Elijah Cummings and his wife's net worth. Let's talk about that. Cummings made his financial disclosures public in 2018. It's standard procedure for members of the House of Reps to file a financial disclosure report for transparency. Cummings had followed this practice every election, including during the 2018 general election, his last one before his death. Based on his financial disclosures from 2018, his net worth is estimated at $600,000. His minimum liabilities are also worth $600,000. Adding to his income was his wife's salary as a policy consultant with Global Policy Solutions in Washington, D.C. Her annual salary is somewhere between $250,000 and $500,000. Cummings earned very little doing speeches. I'm not going to read that. Cummings and Rocky Moore's total assets were worth $1.3 million in 2018. In that same year, they sold their DC home worth up to $1 million and received between $100,000 and $1 million in capital gains. They also had two properties in Baltimore that they were renting out. While one property fetches around $5,000 to $15,000 in rent, the other brings in $15,000 to $50,000. They also had investments worth $300,000 in other pension funds. But we're not supposed to expect anything in exchange for our votes. We're not supposed to expect our congressmen and women to work on bills that uplift the very people that put them into office. American descendants of slavery. Make it make sense. I can't hold them accountable in life while they're amongst the living. I'm not allowed to hold them accountable when it comes to the presidency. My priority is supposed to be unseating Trump, not reparations for American descendants of slavery who are on the bottom, clearly, from the data I just presented. I'm not supposed to have disdain for the lack of what they did as the representative for Baltimore in their passing. I'm not supposed to feel some kind of way when they wail and gnash their teeth louder for DACA than they do American descendants of slavery who are suffering under white terrorism in the country our ancestors built with their lives. I'm not supposed to be outraged that out of $107 trillion, white folks share $100 trillion. And of the $3 trillion that Black folks share, those are household dollars I'm talking about, 90% of us share $700 billion, while 10% of Blacks share $2.3 trillion. I'm not supposed to have anything to say about it. Just continue to be resolved to be the mules of the Democratic Party, while everyone else comes up on our backs. While the CBC cries harder and louder for illegal immigration. But I'm heartless and I'm cruel to only reserve my tears for ADOS. It's time to wake up, sheeple. Run me that data. Tell me what I am to expect from my leaders. You tell me, since I'm wrong to do it. Tell me, what should I expect from my congressmen and women? And for the record, I went through about 100 bills sponsored by Elijah Cummings. I think he sponsored about 225. Congress.gov. I didn't get through all 225 bills, but I really didn't see much addressing the economic egregious disparity, the racial wealth gap in Baltimore. I have family that live there. I know what East North Avenue is like, even with the Blacks in Wax Museum down the street. I know what we are dealing with. And everyone, ADOS and allies, needs to open up their eyes and look at the data and stop this, what's the word I'm looking for? Aspirationalism. Aspirational politics, respectability politics, identity politics. And a third of Baltimore is at zero. And Latinas and Asians and whites' median incomes outpace ours by $20,000 plus. And even with degrees, it does not close the racial wealth gap. I don't care how many gig jobs you work, it will not close the racial wealth gap. I don't care how many Jordans you buy, how many hair weaves you put in, it will not close the racial wealth gap. So, until someone can offer me a solution that can close this egregious racial wealth gap, then I am on reparations until they cut the check. I will not get distracted. All distractions are equal. Trump ain't the first racist in office. He won't be the last. Whether it's blue or red, we're dealing in a two-party system. So, show up, vote down. If they have nothing to offer you, write in ADOS. I am endorsing Marianne Williamson. I don't expect her to win, but that's my protest vote in the primary. I'm encouraging the rest of you to follow along, to send a message to the establishment candidate that is sure to be nominated, whether we do it or not. Because when will we ever get another opportunity for any presidential candidate to speak as full-throated about our repair as Marianne Williamson? Her number's wrong, true, but she at least understands that we are owed a debt. Can you say that about any of the other candidates running? It doesn't surprise me that they've silenced her on the debate stage. That comes as no surprise to me. So let me do a little housekeeping, because I heard the question, I read the question in a text feed. This is not the ADOS movement endorsing Marianne Williamson. This is Angela Nirvana endorsing Marianne Williamson. This is not the ADOS SoCal channel. This is the Friends of ADOS TV station. So I just need to clear that up in case there's any confusion. Oh my goodness, I'm almost out of time. I thank you for your attention. I'm going to read through some of the comments. Good morning, Jamar. Thank you, Francine. Hello, good morning. Angela speaking facts. Thank you, Jamar. Francine says Democrats feel ADOS, who are their super voters, should get no agenda leading to specific tangibles for us. You're absolutely right. George Gossett Jr. says, you preaching, girl. Thank you. In other words, the Dems want us to just shut up and vote for them. Absolutely. Okay. Oh, how do I scroll down or up? What is it doing? Okay. Peace, fam. Thank you, Justin. Amaru says true. Hello from Trey. Hello, fam. Okay. Wow from Lee Davis. Good morning. Speak the truth. Thank you. Greetings, ADOS family. Yolanda, greetings to you. Shaking my head. Yeah, me too. Hey, Francine. Hey, Angela. Okay, so let me scroll down. Good show. Thank you, Trey. Okay, guys, if you don't have any questions, I've got about 10 minutes. I do want to share something really a little bit crazy to me. Since I got 10 minutes to spare before the lights go off for good, we're going to work out these technical issues, family, but this baby is here and we're going to keep it moving despite what comes, okay? I wanted to share with you guys, did you know this? That there was, hold on, let me get to the beginning of it. A Republic of Maryland was founded in Africa. Let me back this story up. There was this society that was formed to actually have us, after they used us for slavery, I think for over 200 years in Baltimore. Did you know that there was an initiative to send us back to Africa? Did you know that? Well, I'm going to read it. Concerned about the tensions of discrimination against free blacks and the threat they pose to slave societies, planters and others organized the Maryland State Colonization Society in 1817 as an auxiliary branch of the American Colonization Society founded in Washington, D.C. in 1860. The MSCS had strong Christian support and was the primary organization proposing return of all free African Americans to a colony to be established in Africa. But by this time, most slaves and free blacks had been born in the United States and wanted to gain their rights in the country they felt was theirs. So, use us up, breed us like farm animals, and then once we're free, tuck us away in Africa. That's going to be another topic for another day. I'm going to drill down into that. Did any of you know that? I had no idea. Well, we're going to dig into that and so much more. Just know that this election cycle, your vote is about an exchange. Spread the word. We've got to come up with a strategy. We've got to get on code. We've got to care about ADOS first. No exceptions. Stay tuned for future shows. Next week, Saturday, I'll have my partner in the Friends of ADOS Super PAC, Marlon Aldridge, on to talk about the vote. I'm super excited about that. We have so many incredible guests to expose you to all over the country. I'm so proud of the ADOS movement. And I'm going to bring on those superstars who are chairing committees throughout the country to have them be guests on my show dealing with all of the subject matter that make the case for reparations like a drumbeat. ADOS, we are here, strong. We're not going anywhere. We're not buckling to your taunts. We're not buckling to your emotionalism, to your aspirationalism. Not only is the roof on fire, we are on fire. And as long as I've got breath, I'm fighting for myself, my fellow ADOS, my daughter, and our children. They need us in this fight, and they need us to teach them how to fight politically for their people. Unapologetically ADOS. First, second, third. So, I'm going to search one more time to see if there's any questions. We're over 200 years behind when it comes to white wealth. I would venture to say more than that. They have a 466-year head start. Okay. We're at 8:56. So since I don't see any questions in the queue, I want to thank you so much for spending your Saturday with me. I would love it if you like the video and share the video with everyone you know, because a large part of our problem is that we bury our head in the sand when it comes to the data. And if Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore have taught me nothing else, they've taught me how to be about that data. So, with that said, thank you. Thank you all. I appreciate you so much. I love you strong. And I look forward to next Saturday, 9 o'clock, same time, same bat station, okay? ADOS, we here. You make it a beautiful, God-inspired rest of your day. Peace, family.